probably agree on.
Yeah, the playoff team for sure.
I tell you what, I don't think there was a more accurate state. And
if they struggle again, I don't think there's any way you can keep Alex Critch. But
hey guys, I'm Bud Elliott, and that's Adam Rowe. Of the Devil's Den. That means we're talking Duke today on Summer School. What's going on, buddy?
How you doing, Bud? Good to see you.
Doing well, man. Just enjoyed watching Duke last year, 8-5, 4-4 in the ACC. I think it's like the third coach now in my lifetime that has shown you can win and do well at Duke. And it used to be a question, was it just Spurrier? And then it was, maybe just Spurrier and Cutcliffe. And now Spurrier, Cutcliffe, and Elko have all done it. What's the mood among Duke fans? I know Elko left for A&M, and they're bringing in Manny Diaz.
Yeah, I think Elko is a four-letter word around Durham these days, just because of the way he bounced out of town, kind of middle of the night. But there's a lot of excitement around Manny Diaz. He's obviously an experienced coach in the ACC. Things are different in Miami than they are at Duke. So I know, I think he was right around that 8-win number down in Miami, which isn't good enough there. But you can get close to getting a statue built for you at Duke for putting up consistent 8-win seasons. Diaz obviously reinvented himself a little bit when he went to Penn State the last 2 years. He had the nation's best defense by a couple metrics almost right away. And so there's a lot of excitement around Durham that he might be able to bring that kind of reinvigorated, refocused outlook and effort down to Durham and really capitalize on what Elko and David Feely in the weight room did the last 2 years to turn things around for Duke and keep that momentum going.
How would you expect things to look different under Manny Diaz than they did under Elko?
Yeah, it's hard. It's a little hard to say that just because it's so early. I think a good thing for Duke's consistency and the ability for them to continue that momentum is that David Feely stuck around. He was after getting Diaz, he was the biggest hire of the offseason because he spends so much time with the players. In the spring, in the summer, in the winter, when the coaches can't really work with them. I think getting Malik Murphy from Texas is really an underrated addition on the national college football scene. If you trust 24/7's transfer portal rankings, Murphy is actually ranked higher than Riley Leonard, and he's healthy. That's a big dude. He's listed at 6'5", 238. He's just – everybody I talk to is that is a massive human being. So I think the addition of Jonathan Brewer to his offensive coordinator from SMU, I think they want to really play aggressively on offense and really put pressure on the opposing team to try to outscore them. Obviously, Manny Diaz has defensive chops forever in this sport, so they're gonna bring the heat there. But I think they really want to put pressure on teams offensively, score a lot of points.
I kind of love that Manny seems to understand what pairs with his defensive style. If you look at it, last year Elko had one of the lowest situation adjusted blitz rates in the country. Duke was not a heavy blitz team. They were sort of no chunk plays allowed, win in the red zone team. And Manny Diaz is let's create chaos and pressure nonstop. And both methods can work clearly, as Elko's did last year, and Manny's has for a long time. But I think if you're going to run what Manny runs on defense, which you're going to be okay giving up some scores because he's going to do some things that are, I guess, mathematically unsound at times, but also sometimes those also pay off because the opponent doesn't pick it up and you get a strip sack and or just some kind of crazy, pick six. You want to play more of that up tempo offense, like you mentioned, Gunner coming over from SMU, and I think he. The timing couldn't be better on this to me. Just, Adam, when I look at what they lost on the D-line, but if you guys don't watch ACC ball, they got two stud corners on this team who are really damn good players. Yeah. You can run some of the stuff Diaz wants to run with this lineup, I think.
Yeah. I think Chandler Rivers is a guy you can put on an island. That guy, he was a freshman All-American. I think he was second team All-American according to some numbers. He was kind of hidden a little bit in the defense last year, partially because he shut down his side of the field. So he didn't put up good numbers. But yeah, I mean, I think also, the Duke has played a 4-2-5 base defensive scheme for as long as I can remember. I mean, this is Jim Knowles' defense. Even when he left, Matt Guerreri was Jim Knowles' protege. He kept that same defensive scheme. I think Manny plays a little bit more of a 3-3-4 look, or at least a 4-3 kind of base. So they've really been active trying to add linebackers from the portal. I think you see it in the recruiting. They're starting to target more linebackers too. I don't think they'll make that shift this year, but I think you might see a little bit more of those principles mixed in. So getting those two corners on the island is going to be really important, as you said. And then bringing the heat from the safeties, something he's always liked to do. It'll be interesting to see how their defensive line stacks up. They lost Aeneas Peebles to Virginia Tech, who was one of the highest rated transfers in the portal. He's a big loss. And then Jamion Franklin is a guy who got picked up as an undrafted free agent to the Ravens, just a hoss in the middle. Dwayne Carter obviously got drafted by the Buffalo Bills. So they've got a lot to replace there, but they did play a lot of guys last year. So they might be okay.
Absolutely. On offense, a little more up tempo, as you mentioned. They're very excited about Murphy. I assume Murphy, as Manny Diaz officially named him the starter, or is it just sort of understood?
It's just kind of understood. I mean, Grayson Loftus filled in admirably for Riley Leonard last year, towards the end of the year after Leonard went out, but and Henry Beelan did too, but his arm was destroyed. Loftus was more of like a game manager kind of guy, and he's still young. Like he was a true freshman last year. I don't see his style of play winning out over a guy like Malik Murphy in this offense. And Diaz is all about excitement, selling the product. A guy like Malik Murphy is going to get butts and seats.
Absolutely. So he's throwing to Jordan Moore, who's I think really good.
It's great. Yeah.
Who is because they do want to spread it out some, but not that they don't use the tight end. They clearly do. If you look at some of the SMU's numbers, they also had SMU's got a stud tight end, a freshman kid. But who is the other receiver that you would expect to get a lot of targets in this look?
Yeah, I think they added a sneaky addition from Old Dominion via the portal. This guy Javon Harvey. There's a lot of talk and excitement about him coming in. I think he was like a FCS All-American last year or something, but they're really excited about him. There's a couple other guys that have been around for a while, especially like Eli Pankel is a guy coming back for his fifth or sixth year. He was injured all last year. He's just active player. I don't know how else to describe him. He's high personality. He's got bleach blonde hair. He's always jumping around, getting excited. Samir Hagens was another guy who started at times last year. He's more of a slot guy, 5'10", 185. And then incoming freshman Chase Tyler, who hasn't enrolled yet, but Duke won a big recruiting battle over Tennessee was like really fighting him neck and neck for Tyler. And Duke recruited him as a wide receiver. Everybody else was kind of recruiting him as a DB, but he's 6'2", 160. I mean, he can make an immediate impact. Last guy I would say is John Tavis Robertson, just a speedy, shifty guy. He got a lot of time last year too.
Nice. They lost like everybody at running back. Is this going to be a by committee approach, or is there somebody you think who's coming up and just no doubt stud?
Yeah, they did it. They did, and then Jacquez Moore, one of the. I mean, you could call him kind of a starter. Entered the portal and came back.
Oh, he came back.
He came
That's
back.
what I love doing summer school. Okay, yeah.
He's a stud. He was very close to taking over like all the snaps last year. Jordan Waters made that difficult for him, but they were like kind of like a two-headed monster back there in the backfield. Travis Bates is a guy as a redshirt sophomore that hasn't like burst on the scene as much as I thought he would. If you watch practice, he's just explosive. But there's another guy, Peyton Jones, who's now going to be a sophomore, who's like he was as a true freshman last year. They couldn't keep him on the bench. He was too good. He didn't get as many snaps behind those two experienced guys, but I mean he's going to play a lot too.
is running back the room where you would say they have the best depth on this team? Like if somebody goes down, they're still good?
I think that depends on the health of Marquise Collins. As a freshman coming in, there was really high expectations for him, and he tore his knee up. He actually tore his ACL his senior year of high school, and then re-injured it in training camp, just as he was getting healthy, and then injured it again this spring. So if he's healthy, I think they're good. But I mean, they've got Moore, Jones. Those are like the two definite starters. Behind them, I mean, they moved over a guy named Karan Boyd from wide receiver position because they didn't have enough depth. So I think they're top heavy in that room. But if they have an injury, it's going to be interesting.
Gotcha. So this schedule, I mean, we look at Elon at Northwestern, UConn at Middle Tennessee State, UNC.
Yeah.
So every single one of those teams is breaking in a new quarterback, and Middle Tennessee has a new coach as well. Pretty new situation. I mean, Carolina loses Drake May. That's not a small loss.
Not at all.
Although I think Duke played them pretty well with at least one of the years with May, right?
This past year, they took them to like triple overtime with Grayson Loftus at quarterback. Like
that was insane. What has to happen? Like I don't know if somebody has to step up or just somebody has to play to expectation for them to really start fast. I look at the back half of the scheduling, and if they don't start fast, this could be tough because then they get at Georgia Tech, Florida State, SMU, at Miami, at NC State, the Hokies, and then finish at Wake, which you're probably favored in that game given what Wake lost, but maybe not by a lot. What has to happen for Duke to I guess like comfortably make a bowl, or like, hey, like we already have 6 before we go play Wake?
Yeah, I mean their over under is 6.5, which I thought was kind of a big number for a team that lost their starting quarterback, lost a few really strong linemen on both sides of the ball. I thought it was a big number, but again, I think the addition of Malik Murphy is really underrated nationally. Sure, he didn't play a ton, but he's behind Quinn Ewers. But technically, depending on who you want to talk to, he was ahead of Arch Manning on the depth chart. Like he's a good player, big dude, kind of an unusual guy at quarterback because he's so big. I mean, if they hit the ground running in this system, I think starting out 4-0 is not out of the question. I think that North Carolina game is going to be maybe kind of the swing game there as to whether or not they get 7 or 6. But I mean, if they can beat Georgia Tech at Georgia Tech, and you never really know what you're going to get from the Yellow Jackets. But there's a bye game. There's a bye week after that Georgia Tech game before they return back to host Florida State. SMU's good. I don't know. I mean, I think they've got to hit the ground running with Murphy in this system to gain that momentum early to carry them through.
I look back at what this now Duke, previous SMU, previous Miami offensive coaching staff, because Manny was with, for the listeners at home, Manny was with this offensive coaching staff at Miami. And then Manny went to Penn State when Rhett got the SMU job because Manny got, fired for Mario at Miami, despite the fact they've had about the same record, actually a little bit less so far. I look at what they did with Tyler Van Dyke, and I mean, he's not a guy who outwardly appears to know how to read defenses well, and they seem to scheme it up for him like extremely well. And just, hey, you got a huge arm, let's find ways to use that.
Yeah.
I mean, Murphy in the spring game last year for Texas looked damn good. Murphy during the season was kind of really up and down, but that's coming in as an injury replacement. If you got a whole offseason to design it and you really how does Murphy see it? How does he read it? I kind of have some faith in that SMU style or Rhett Lashley, Brewer style offense to figure out what he can and can't do and play to the strength. Maybe I'm misguided there, but I kind of see some similarities. Big dude, huge arm, don't run a whole lot.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people look at him and say, oh, he's going to be a running quarterback, but really his strengths are throwing the ball. He gets it downfield in a hurry. I don't watch a lot of Texas football, but I know those were his first 2 games.
Yeah.
It ain't easy to
No.
play college football in the Big 12. I don't know. I think he doesn't get talked about enough. And I think they're really going to lean on him early, to put that pressure on opposing defenses, and I don't want to say air raid, coming back like it was under Spurrier, but I think they're going to air the ball out a lot more than people are used to watching for Duke. I think Elko's really smart at finding that little edge that you need just to win the game. He didn't care about scoring a ton of points. He didn't care about shutting anybody out. He just knew like you just needed that one extra play or one extra score to get the win. I think Diaz wants to run it down guys' throats. So
Absolutely.
we'll see if he can do it right away. It might take a couple years, especially when the offensive line turnover that they have. But if that position group can gel, I think they can really have something special.
Adam, we'll be following all your work over on Devil's Den. I really appreciate your time, and thanks for joining Summer School, man.
Can't wait for the season. Thanks, bud.
See you, buddy.